Welcome to Living Well with MS. This podcast comes to you from Overcoming MS, the world's leading multiple sclerosis healthy lifestyle charity, which helps people live a full and healthy life through the Overcoming MS program. We interview a range of experts and people with multiple sclerosis. Please remember, all opinions expressed are their own. Don't forget to subscribe to Living Well with MS on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. And now, let's meet our guest.
Welcome to the Living Well with MS podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Alex, and today I'm talking to Annette and Graham Henry, founders of Henry and Henry, a plant-based diet and breathing re-education hub providing science-based education about the benefits of a whole food, plant-based diet and breathing re-education. So firstly, welcome. And I believe you're joining us from Berlin.
Indeed we are. A very cold Berlin, but I guess we can't boast about that because it's probably even colder where you are at the moment.
It's pretty cold where this is actually, I think we're going out in the spring actually. It's probably going to be lovely and warm when this goes out, yes. But it's currently icy December at the moment. And obviously but presumably from the UK originally.
Yes, that's right, yes.
So to start off with, Annette, could you tell us a bit about how you treated your endometriosis, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, and chronic fatigue through plant-based nutrition?
Yeah, well, they actually were a couple of decades apart. It was the endometriosis that started me off. I'd had full-blown surgery and medication, and it was coming back, and I didn't really want to go through that again, and I concluded there really must be another way. And I set about looking for the other way and came across a book about healing endometriosis through nutrition. And I bought it, read it in great detail. Thankfully, it was full of scientific studies backing things up because I needed that, because although I'd come across a lot of different medical people, not one of them had mentioned food in relation to the illness I had. And I did what the lady who wrote the book suggested, which put me towards a much more whole food plant-based way of eating, but not fully plant-based. She did persuade me, and I'm very grateful to her for persuading me to give up dairy. That was really my big starting point. I already wasn't eating much red meat, so that was easy to give up. But I continued with fish and eggs, and I think that was mainly and occasionally white meat. Yes, that was about it. But it was much more natural foods than I'd been used to. And very little processed food. It was processed still, but it was minimally processed compared with what I had before. And I have to say, it worked beautifully. I never went back to the doctors. I didn't go back. I didn't have the surgery. I didn't need any of this. And so that instilled in me the idea that food was miraculous, and why did doctors not know about it? So fast forward to 2017. It was exactly 2017 Christmas time. I got the flu, and it didn't really leave me properly. For the whole of 2018, I had chronic fatigue. By this time, we were together, and the two of us were eating a fully plant-based diet, and it was fairly high raw as well. But the problem was, it was a gourmet raw diet, and I was making wonderful cheesecakes full of fat and all sorts of luscious, beautiful things. But my fat intake was unbelievably high. Now I realize I didn't at the time. It's quite hard to measure fat because you don't really see exactly how much it's contributing to your body. But I had just here where my liver is, I noticed it was quite tender, and I was a little bit concerned about that. And in the back of my mind, I was hearing plant-based doctors that I'd listened to occasionally or read talking about eating more fruits and vegetables and letting go of a lot of the fat, certainly the oils. And I thought I'd always poo-pooed it and thought it was nonsense. I don't really know why now. And anyway, I took on board what they said, also supported by my own desire when I had the flu to only have fruits and vegetables. That's all I wanted, fruits and light vegetables. I couldn't really stomach anything else for about 5 days. And it just made me aware of the idea that there's something that was innate in me that I needed to heal, and it was prompting me to do that. And it seemed to be exactly what I needed. The tenderness eased, And then the other symptoms gradually too, and it was gradual. I think with chronic fatigue, it can be very gradual. It can be really long for a lot of people. I'm aware of that. But for me, it was the best part of a year and a little bit into 2019. And thankfully, I recovered fully, really. I got my energy back. I stopped having the unbelievably ridiculous bouts of anxiety that I'd been having, which I think was the worst symptom. And my sleep didn't ever recover, but then it hasn't done for most of my adult life. And it was worse while I had the chronic fatigue. So it did get a little bit better again. So that's kind of in a nutshell what happened. And that's the point really that persuaded us, alongside the education we were doing, to become fully whole food plant-based.
Yeah, a dairy comes up a lot, I think, and considering it's still listed as a food group.
Yes.
And I just think, and they still do now, so well, what are you getting instead of dairy? It's like, well, I really am not sure that we can need dairy, because we are adults and adult animals don't have breast milk.
Correct.
And no creature on earth except humans has breast milk from another species.
That's right. Yeah.
So it just logically just doesn't make sense that it's absolutely necessary, and therefore you have to do something to supplement not having it. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And the more you speak to people about the science behind it, it's like, well, yeah, you're having dairy because it's got a lot of calcium in, and you need calcium because your body's not making enough calcium. How do you make calcium? Well, vitamin D is used to get calcium out of green leafy vegetables. We're not getting enough vitamin D because we're living in Berlin or England and wrapped up for the cold. And therefore actually maybe if we're short, and it's like, if you have vitamin D supplements, you've got to worry about getting too much calcium. If you take, and they say, be careful if you're taking vitamin D supplements, you might get, it's like, hang on, you were saying that I need dairy for the calcium, and now you're saying that if I get enough vitamin D, I might end up with too much calcium. So yeah, you sort of think, okay, there's a logic going on here that maybe we don't need the dairy. Yes. There we go. And the other thing with the overcoming our MS approach is very much saturated fat was probably those are big parts of it. Saturated fat's not good for you. Dairy's not good for you. And I think the more you speak to different people from different backgrounds of different autoimmune conditions, you find actually there's a lot of commonality, I think, in all these things. I wonder what would happen actually with COVID fatigue, whether that will ultimately be maybe that would be something, would be a shift in the mindset if they worked out that actually that could be treated by better diet. Who knows?
That would be great.
So Graham, could you tell us a bit about how you re-met Annette, I believe, and about your health journey through whole food plant-based nutrition?
Yeah, so around 2009, I got back in touch with Annette through Friends Reunited. We'd originally met as students back in 1983. So showing our age there.
Well, Friends Reunited does somewhat as well. Yes. Friends Reunited is what we had before Facebook to anyone younger listeners. Yes. Actually, one of the founders of Friends Reunited is a follower of the OMS program, and she's been an interview guest on the podcast.
Right. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, so we got back in touch after not having really, I think we met once within the 27 or so years that since 1983. And most of my adult life, I've been overweight, and I had a job where I was traveling a lot. Overseas, I was staying in hotels, eating out in restaurants, and my weight just increased gradually and consistently to a point where I was around, I guess, 18 stone in 2009 when I re-met Annette. So that's about 250 pounds, or if you're working in kilograms, I guess that's around 115 kilograms. So I was really clinically obese. I was suffering from high blood pressure, high cholesterol. I was on medication for high blood pressure, and for a period of time on statins for the cholesterol. So I wasn't in a great place, and I was kind of wondering what to do about it, because I'd tried so many diets over my lifetime. I'd done the Atkins diet, the high carb. Low carb diets, etc. And I just tried to calorie count and reduce what I was eating, but nothing really ever worked. Nothing stuck. Everything, it wasn't sustainable. It wasn't enjoyable. So like so many diets, I just reverted to type, put the weight back on again. When I got in touch with Annette, I'm pretty easygoing when it comes to food and pretty adaptable. And I just started eating really what Annette was eating. We were meeting regularly. I was travelling over the Pennines every other weekend to see Annette in Cumbria. I was based up over in Yorkshire. And whenever we ate together, we ate the same things. So I was kind of being drip fed, if you like, the kind of diet that Annette was eating. And also because it was beginning, I was beginning to think, this is okay. I don't really want to disappoint her. I'll start eating like this at home as well. It was very, very straightforward. I didn't find it difficult at all. And the weight just actually started to gradually drop off. And I thought, wow, this is incredible. I'm not actually counting calories. I'm not worrying about what I'm eating. I'm not thinking that's got too much fat in, etc. It just felt right. So that's really how my journey started. And by 2011, when we got married, I dropped about 2 stone. And then from then on, we both kind of evolved really from that stage into a more whole food plant-based diet. We'd already incorporated parts of it, as Annette has described. But we then became a little bit more full on and with the raw food. And again, the weight continued to drop off. I'm now 11 stone. So that's 7 stone lost in weight. Never thought I was dieting. Never felt I wasn't eating pleasurable food. So it's the best diet for me in the world. It's also, I'm no longer on blood pressure medication, no longer on statins. Blood pressure normalized. My doctor was happy to take me off. So for me, it really is a healing diet. And I think that's so exciting.
And for me, I found I'm about the same, about 11 stone, and it leveled off. And I think a lot of people worry because they know they were coming from up here, and they're like, they've got visions of them being like 4 stone or something. It doesn't seem to, does it? It just seems to take you to a hell. And also, like you say, I don't think about I think about what I eat. I don't think about the quantities of what I eat. I eat when I'm hungry, and I stop eating when I'm not hungry, and I don't worry about it. And I don't even think about the quantities. And it seems to be the what you eat, not the worrying. Whereas traditional dieting is you're constantly hungry and in that sort of state of not getting enough. But actually, you don't have to be hungry. If you eat the right thing, you can eat as much of it as you want to eat. And you seem to just, your body, well, remarkably, over the millions of years of evolution, our body seems to actually work out how to do the right thing.
Absolutely. And the wonderful thing is as well that, one of my problems was I had a healthy appetite. That was one of the original reasons that I put on weight initially. But I was eating the wrong types of food. Whereas going on to a more whole food plant-based diet, the bowls of salad and vegetables, etc. that we have now and fruit you feel like you're really treating yourself with all that great food. But of course, it's low calorie density, which is great because you're not putting on the weight.
So you're both certified plant-based nutrition educators, and you set up your company Henry and Henry. So could you tell us a bit about Henry and Henry and what the main health benefits are for everyone of a whole food plant-based diet?
Yeah, so we decided that it was really important if we wanted to impart knowledge to other people that we needed to know ourselves what was the science that was underpinning nutrition. So we took a really, really brilliant course trained by 2 plant-based educators based in the United States, who really, it was quite a rigorous course, something like 200 hours of video learning and interactive sessions. And it taught us everything really we needed to know how to thrive on a plant-based diet. And they also included quite an element of the raw plant-based nutrition within that as well, which was really useful for us because there's a lot of things that we just didn't know. So we loved that course. It gave us so much information, so much confidence to be able to then say to others, if you want to go on and move on towards this type of eating, this is how to do it. So we're not nutritionists. We're not able to take diagnose or tell someone how to deal with a particular condition. We're actually telling people how to get the most out of a plant-based diet, how to transition if you're eating a standard Western diet, how to do it, how to go about it. So our website what we do is we run a number of classes and events and workshops, various areas of nutrition, and also we've now incorporated the breathing re-education as well, which is another story. So everything's most of it now is online coaching. So it's live events mainly via Zoom, where we actually take a particular subject area and we give education on that, and people can ask questions. And we have a membership option, so people can take out membership with us, and then they get a lot of the classes for free, or they can buy them on a off the shelf as and when they like. And then the breathing programs we do are usually that's a little bit more of a kind of longer term thing, because you've got to spend quite a bit of time going through people, re-educating how to do the exercises, etc. But everything's on there and everything's explained, and so that's what we do.
So, Annette, if you go to an entirely plant-based whole food diet, we mentioned sort of dairy. Are there nutrients that you would have to worry about, that you might be concerned that you're not getting all the nutrients you require?
Yes, there are a few, but there's one in particular that pretty much everybody knows about and loves to tell you if you're plant-based or vegan, and that is particularly the B12. But I've always maintained, since I knew this myself, that vegans and plant-based eaters are actually at a bit of an advantage, because so many people remind them that they haven't got B12 in their diet. What a lot of us don't tend to know is that the B12 is actually bacteria, and it used to be on the food that we ate and didn't sanitize to the extent that we do now. And that's why we don't get it in our plants anymore. But it also means that sometimes the animals don't either. So eating meat isn't necessarily a guarantee of B12. And so it means that we definitely need to supplement if we're fully plant-based. But quite often people who are meat eaters possibly should consider it too. And especially if they're taking certain types of medication. There are some that inhibit the absorption of the B12. And a lot of people take proton pump inhibitors nowadays, and really that's something that should be advised to them, that they need to take a B12 supplement. So that's definitely one.
Mm-hmm.
But additionally, you have to make sure that you are focusing on the nutrients. They call them nutrients of concern, and in effect, every single dietary pattern has nutrients of concern. And with a plant-based diet, it can be calcium. I think it's actually quite easy to get calcium, but it depends which route you take. There are so many varieties of a plant-based diet. There's also zinc. That can be a little more challenging because it is more abundant in a meat-based diet, and some of the B vitamins some of the time. But of course, on the other hand, you're getting wonderful amounts of vitamin C, folate, antioxidants that are not yet classed as essential, but possibly will be in the future because we're learning more about them. And there's the big protein one. I'll let Graham just mention the protein one because he loves this one.
Yeah, so of course that's the old adage: where do you get your protein? And if you're fully plant based, there's some great role models out there. People who are eating fully plant based diets. Lewis Hamilton, for example, mm-hmm. And Djokovic, and I think David Hay, the heavyweight boxer, also. So it just shows that you can actually build muscle and be really athletic on a plant-based diet. And we've actually been misled a little bit by the whole protein story, that the original research into protein was based on requirements for rats. And it took a long time until it was actually understood that our bodies are somewhat different and our requirements are different from rats. And that it's also said that plant protein isn't a complete protein. And actually, interestingly, a lot of the textbooks are wrong in that, because if you look at any of the food analysis that go on the databases of how food is made up, all vegetables, I think, contain all of the essential amino acids. It's just some of them have a slightly lower amount of some than others. So one might be lower in lysine, another one might be lower in, let's say, tryptophan, etc. So it's wise when you're having a plant-based diet to make sure that you have a good variety of food, that you meet your calorie requirements or energy requirements for the day, have a good variety of food, and you really can't fail to get the protein requirements you need if you're doing that. I've never heard of anyone with protein deficiency, actually. all the time that I've been involved in doing this. So I think it's usually an argument that's used to beat the plant-based people around the head by those that don't that like to eat meat.
Well,
As far as
cows seem to do quite well at making the meat, don't they? They don't.
Absolutely.
And there was, I don't know the absolute accuracy of this, but I did read somewhere that actually there is one thing you can eat which has all the proteins required to build muscle for humans. There's only one thing you can eat, apparently, and that is human flesh. So, assuming you're not going to go with with that sort of diet, then you're going to need to supplement, because it's different anyway. You're going to need extra bits of micronutrients and so on. There's literally that's the only thing. So yeah, it does seem straight, because we're eating all these things. In fact, almost everything we eat would be a herbivore if you're eating meat, and yet they've all managed to make that muscle through eating vegetables.
Absolutely. So, you did ask me earlier in the previous question. I realised we didn't touch on it when we were asking about Henry and Henry, and what I didn't answer was about the main health benefits of a whole food plant-based diet. And I think that it's worth mentioning that, because a lot of people maybe assume they know, but just to reiterate, really, is when you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, you're getting all of the foods in their original form, completely intact with all of their nutrition as nature intended. You're getting also fiber, which is so important. I mean, we know now that fiber is an integral part of our diet, and essentially it's the fourth macronutrient, along with fat, carbohydrates, and protein, really. What it does in terms of our gut health as well is so important and underestimated. And in the Western diet, we eat too little of it. The standard American diet, for example, I think the average amount of fiber that's eaten is scarily low. It's something like 16 grams a day, whereas it's actually recommended it should be really closer to 30 grams a day. We reckon we probably have about 60 to 70 grams a day in how we eat. And it's also worth looking at the whole area of prebiotics, probiotics, and postbiotics. So prebiotics is the fiber that we eat that we can't actually do anything with, but our gut bacteria can. That's their food, and that's what they thrive on. And you don't get any fiber in meat or animal food, so that's important. Probiotics are the healthy gut bugs that we have. So the prebiotics are for the probiotics, our gut bugs, and then the postbiotics are the byproducts of that nutrition that the bugs eat, that release all sorts of wonderful chemicals in our body, short chain fatty acids, which we now know have so many health benefits, help with our immune system, and help with so many other fat features in our body. So all of that comes in whole food plant-based nutrition, and also all of the anti-inflammatory substances, all of the phytochemicals, the antioxidants. None of those you get in animal foods. So of course we have to eat plant foods to get the advantages and benefits of all of those. And the other thing is it's very low calorie density. So we're not going to put on weight if we eat whole food plant-based food, because it's filling, it's got fiber.
And how would you help someone, or you advise someone, if they're starting out on this journey, that how to change their way of eating, their behaviours?
It's very much dependent on the individual. This is a really difficult one, and I, if need be, I would point out to the person that if they've got cravings and are struggling to make a transition due to being pulled in a different direction, one that they don't really want to stay in, to understand a little bit about our ancestry, and that we were created with drivers, if you like, to make us choose the sweet fruits, and to make us eat things with fat in for winter time and so on. The fruit we need for the sugar, we actually do need it in order to fuel our brains and the muscles and so on. But of course, the food industry's got hold of that, and they think, aha, we can do something with this. And they've made products that contain fat and sugar and are extremely desirable and sort of go beyond what fruit and fat seem to offer. And we become addicted to them. So it's a case of learning to be quite gentle with yourself, but resolute as well, because most people, especially people listening to this podcast, will have a why. They'll have a reason for why they want to eat better, why they want to improve their health, and if they believe they can do it through food, which so often is possible, then they've got the motivation. It's no surprise that a lot of the people who are involved in whole food plant-based eating, somewhere in their past or their present, have a condition that they're looking to resolve or improve. So I think that would be my starting point. Make sure that they're not worried about the cravings. But then after that, it's a case of what the person can do and their nature. There are some people who are very good at going right for it at one go. And that can be really useful. You let go of all the bad stuff, in inverted commas, and go for what's more healthy or more useful to you. And that has advantages because you're not stuck. There's no transition period. You're there. It's most difficult for most people, though. That is the most difficult way. So I would say that the smaller steps are better for most people because they can handle that better. And it may be a case of changing one meal, making sure your breakfast is plant-based every day or a different meal or whatever, and increasing it. Looking at swaps, if that's relevant to you, because there are loads of things. I mean, one of the obvious ones is people who like chili con carne will do it without the carne, do it without the meat. And actually, because you've got all these spices in, you're still going to get the pleasure that you had before, because the meat doesn't really give you much in the way of taste. And you can even replicate the texture. I'm not a fan of the plant-based meats, but for transition purposes, they've got a lot to offer. I mean, they're getting better and better in terms of being convincing as a step-in for meat products. So it really does depend on the person and how they feel about what's important to them. I mean, not everybody would leap straight away to our diet. We didn't, so why would we expect other people to? So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. So over the last, let's say, about 5 years, the amount of vegan food in supermarkets has massively increased. Yeah. So there's pretty much a whole aisle of chiller cabinets in my local supermarket, mostly massively processed. Quite a lot of, you mentioned the sort of fake meats. There's quite a lot of that around. Not all. I mean, some of it's not that processed, but a lot of it is very, very processed. And you said you eat you eat quite a lot of raw food. So what are the benefits of eating raw fruit and vegetables as opposed to eating a plant-based diet, but that might be entirely made up of the sort of vegan aisle in their supermarket?
Yeah, I love this question. I think this is the healing part of the diet, if anything. If you are eating a whole food plant-based diet, to eat a really high proportion of raw fruits and vegetables in particular gives your body the chance to heal, because I think we have a mindset that, because we grow up with the idea of medicine, we grow up with the mindset that something comes and does something to you, whereas food is supportive. Food is, ideally, if it's going to work for you, it's supportive of your body's ability to heal. And by that I mean, if you're eating fresh fruits and vegetables, they don't put a big demand on your digestive system. Even the vegetables, I know some people tend to think, oh, raw vegetables, they don't go down very well. And obviously there are exceptions. Don't have raw potatoes, not ideal. But most vegetables can be eaten raw, and especially the light ones. If you're experiencing an illness, then the lighter vegetables, the lettuce and cucumber and what have you, the sorts of things that typically go in the salad, they are ideal. They will break down really well. And even if mechanically you feel them at first because you're not used to those kinds of foods, the biochemistry side of your digestion is going to be much happier, because your body knows exactly what to do with these foods. We've lived with these foods since the start of our evolution, and the human body knows exactly what to do with them, and all the nutrients are available there to offer support. And at the same time, the body is not being taxed by having to break down and utilize and disperse really heavy duty proteins and fats, for example, which is what often you get from animal products. So there's no other consideration either, because there are going to be no cooked food toxins. They're just not there because you haven't cooked it. So they retain a lot of nutrition, and really they're the easiest foods to assimilate.
And is it okay to somewhat process it yourself? In that, I mean, I start off the day with a load of fruit and veg going into a smoothie maker, blending it all up with some water, and that's kind of my breakfast. And I think, well, that's 5 portions of fruit and veg at the beginning of the day. Is that okay? I have heard someone saying, "Oh, actually, blitzing it up might break it down at a cellular level." But is there any?
This is an interesting point, and it's something that I think we still don't definitively know. Actually, one of the concerns, of course, is that if you're blitzing a lot of fruit together and releasing all those sugars, and then eating it straight away in a smoothie, which is fairly concentrated. Particularly if you have blood sugar management issues, if you're diabetic, then it may actually cause too much of a spike. It may not be the best thing to do. But also, you've got to bear in mind that with that fruit, it's not like squeezed like orange juice. If you're putting it in a smoothie, it's still got all its fibre intact. Mm-hmm. That fibre doesn't disappear when we blend it. That fibre is still there, and fibre helps to slow down the release of the sugars. So I think, provided you're not glugging it down in one go, which is very difficult to do with this because it's quite heavy. If you're eating it relatively, mindfully and not rushing it.
We often use
we use a spoon to have ours actually because
I mean, I do. You need to chew it, don't you? It's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we would advocate. And I think that everybody will have their own point at which perhaps they think this is not good for me. Some people have intolerance to fructose, and they may feel a discomfort as a result of that as well. Mm-hmm. So we're all bio-individual. What suits one person doesn't suit another. But we're certainly not going to say, no, smoothies are bad. We think they play a really important part, particularly if you have digestive or if you have issues about having solid food. It can be a really good way to get some great nutrition into you easily and quickly.
And probably that's better than a juicer, which is stripping all the fibre out. Okay.
We would say so, yeah.
And you're an affiliate organisation of the Plant-Based Health Professionals UK, which provides huge amount of information, education, and advocacy on whole food plant-based nutrition, and also mentions the treatment of chronic disease. So, what does the latest research say about plant-based eating and chronic diseases?
So there's been a huge explosion of research really over the last kind of 10 to 15 years. And I know that the plant-based health professionals are a really important advocacy body to make this more widely available. And as health professionals, they have a certain credibility as well, which is important. So everything they do is well researched. They follow the science, and the science is saying that a whole food plant-based diet, or plant-based eating, and preferably whole food plant-based, because that's the healthiest plant-based diet you can eat, so we'll stick with that, is one of the most healthy diets you can eat per se, not only for the planet but for us as individuals. The reason being that it's been shown to reduce the